Tonight, breaking news. The CDC just releasing new quarantine guidelines as cases in the U.S. explode. The isolation recommendation for infected people cut from 10 days to 5. That new guidance as the Omicron variant spreads like wildfire. Several states seeing a record number of cases and an alarming spike in hospitalizations in children. Plus, the U.S. facing a serious crisis with COVID tests. The promise tonight from President Biden. The Omicron surge also creating a travel nightmare. Thousands of flights delayed or canceled this weekend as airline staff test positive for the virus or get exposed. The problem expected to stick around through New Year's. With tensions in the sky already reaching a boiling point, one flight crew forced to break up this brawl between maskless passengers. Winter blast. 30 million Americans under weather alerts from coast to coast, near whiteout conditions out west, with parts of the country now bracing for wind chills near 55 below zero. We're tracking it all. Caught in the crossfire, a 14-year-old girl shot and killed by Los Angeles police as she shopped with her mother. Why authorities say they opened fire inside a busy store. Flooding emergency. Homes underwater in Brazil after 2 dams gave way. More than a dozen people killed. The rescues underway in the air and on the ground. And the quarterback Christmas surprise. The Jets' Zach Wilson giving his waitress 2 tickets to Sunday's game. What she told us about the incredible moment and what it meant to her son. Top Story starts right now. And good evening, everybody. I'm Aaron Gilchrist in tonight for Tom Llamas. We begin Top Story tonight with the updated quarantine guidance as COVID cases surge. The CDC cutting the recommended isolation period from 10 days to 5 if you test positive but are asymptomatic. The new guidance comes as the Omicron variant exploded over the Christmas holiday. States all over the country shattering new records. And an alarming trend is starting to emerge of more children being admitted to hospitals with the virus. Omicron's rapid spread also hampering air travel over the holiday weekend, and airlines don't expect the situation to get better before New Year's. Let's get right to NBC's Sam Brock now, who leads us off tonight from Miami.
Tonight, a sea change in policy from the CDC, cutting the recommended quarantine time in half for all Americans infected with COVID-19. From 10 days down to 5, provided they're asymptomatic and wear masks around others for 5 more days. This as testing for the virus reaches a crisis point. By 5 o'clock in the morning, the lines in South Florida were already forming, with the prospect of free COVID testing kits luring thousands.
What are you seeing in store shelves right now?
Oh, empty everywhere. Every pharmacy you go to.
They were all in stock, they're all fine, but I guess they all disappeared in a matter of 3 days. Like, they just weren't there.
At this library in Miami-Dade County, you're looking at 2 different lines right now. This is for free testing kits. This one is for testing on site. Both of them snake around the building in both directions with no end in sight.
It's a Miami microcosm of a national crisis. Chaos in line from New York to Charlotte to Dallas. President Biden pressed today on the inadequate supply.
Seeing how tough it was for some folks to get a test this weekend shows that we have more work to do. We quadrupled the number of pharmacies offering a free test, and there are now more than 20,000 places where you can get tested for free.
That expanded access comes alongside some alarming developments, a 200,000 daily case average with records in Florida, Louisiana, Delaware, and New York. And in New York City, the number of kids hospitalized more than quadrupling from 22 in early December to 109 through last week.
0% of them were fully vaccinated children. Now, they're not seeing any cases of vaccinated children in the hospital right now.
That has pushed New York's governor to make this plea.
Parents, I'm calling on you. This is the time. You have the kids home from school. There's plenty of vaccination opportunities, from your pediatrician to a site set up by the state of New York, our urgent care centers.
New York City also implementing the strictest private sector vaccine mandate in the country, while also adding even more testing, like this site in Times Square.
This is a priority. Like, don't eat the steaks, never mind the chicken, go get COVID tested or get the vaccine.
Healthcare workers increasingly are trying to address full ICUs with depleted staffs.
I feel like every shift we have a text message that goes out that says that we're short and we're looking for a nurse, but a lot of people are burnt out.
The attrition taking a toll across the globe. with Israel now testing out a fourth shot to help strengthen its virus-stricken front line.
And Sam Brock joins us now from a testing site in Miami. Sam, tell us a little bit more about this CDC decision today. What's behind this move?
The CDC, Aaron, says the science is really driving the decision, especially as we know more about the profile of Omicron. They say that generally speaking, the majority of transmission is happening 1 to 2 days before the onset of symptoms or 2 to 3 days after symptoms. That gives you a 5-day timeline. The CDC, Aaron, also suggesting for fully vaccinated and boosted Americans, if you are exposed to someone with COVID-19, you don't need to quarantine, but they suggest that you do wear a mask for up to 10 days. Aaron, back to you.
All right, Sam Brock for us in Miami. Sam, thank you. And staying on COVID now, this new surge is causing more turbulence when it comes to air travel. Airlines forced to cancel thousands of flights because of employees becoming infected. And that new CDC guidance could help. NBC's Kerry Sanders has more.
Tonight, beyond the snowstorms and wicked winds that caused delays and cancellations, those airline employees who were forced to call in sick and quarantine due to coronavirus now may be back on the job sooner. The decision by the CDC to reduce quarantines to 5 days down from 10 means airline employees, just like healthcare workers who tested positive, can now return to work sooner if they feel better.
I do think airlines are in a position to begin to catch up in the next few days.
In part because of the fast-spreading Omicron variant, airlines were facing employee shortages this past weekend. That led to more than 2,500 flight cancellations, and it began a domino effect. The Hall family today with a long morning delay from Michigan to Florida.
What time did you guys wake up?
Oh, we woke up at about 4 o'clock in the morning.
We could have woke up at like 7 and still been there on time.
Got on the plane, everything was fine, and then one of the pilots didn't show up.
An hour turned into 2 hours, 2.5 hours, but we finally got here.
The flight attendants union had wanted the 10-day quarantine to remain, fearing anything shorter was caving to business pressure.
What we're doing is we're saying that profits are more important than people. And that's just the bottom line, and we can't abide by that.
This comes as flight attendants who are physically closest to passengers were forced yet again Sunday to break up a fight. One unmasked passenger confronting another who had pulled his mask down to eat.
This is not the picture of what aviation is, and it needs to stop.
And Kerry joins us now. Kerry, some logistical questions for you. What do rescheduling and refunds look like right now for all these people who have these canceled flights, and how long is it going to take them to actually get where they're going?
Well, it's first important, Aaron, for people to understand their rights. When your flight is substantially delayed or canceled, you can ask for a refund and get money. The airlines may offer you a voucher, which is your option to accept it. But if you want cash, you can demand cash. Some airlines will even give you a voucher plus cash, but that is per airline. It's not by federal law. And how long is this going to last? Well, because now it's gone from 10-day quarantine down to 5, it's expected that the problems that had been building will now begin to subside much quicker, but it still could take a day or so before there's finally a catch-up, because remember, all the planes were basically full because everybody was flying during this holiday period. Aaron?
Kerry Sanders in Fort Lauderdale. Thank you, Kerry. We want to bring in NBC News chief medical correspondent Dr. John Torres now. So, Dr. John, let's start with that breaking news from the CDC tonight, changing the guidance from 10 days to 5 days of isolation and 5 days with strict masking if you're asymptomatic. Tell us a little bit more about the science behind this decision as you understand it.
You know, Aaron, this is interesting because just last week they had reduced it from 10 to 7 days for healthcare workers based on the science there as well. And so it does get a little bit confusing, and I think it's muddling the communications out there a little bit and what people should be doing, and hopefully it doesn't change much from here. But what they're saying is that once you get into that time period that you're no longer as infectious. They still want you to wear masks, though. But if you look at the CDC's own data, what they say and what they mention is that at day 10, you only have a 1% chance of spreading it to other people, of spreading the virus to other people. At day 7, that goes up to 10% if you're asymptomatic and have not been tested. Now, if you look at the UK, They dropped theirs from 10 to 7 days. That 7 days means that you get a negative test at day 6 and a negative day at day 7, and then you're good to go there. And I think that's the reason the CDC is saying, let's go ahead and keep masks on, because we're not able to do that type of testing. That type of testing drops that 10% down to about 1% if we could do that, but we don't have the ability to do that here in the U.S. yet. I think you're going to see that added on as well. But there's a lot of consternation over this. And again, the communication is a bit muddled. Hopefully they clear it up a little bit, because I know there's nurses unions, like you saw there, the airlines, some of those unions are also saying, hey, we want to make sure we keep people safe. Let's go ahead and keep it in place. But at the same time, they have to balance that with the business needs of trying to live with the virus and going forward here, because this is something we're going to have to do over the next few months, if not a year or so.
Wow, you made so many good points there, but as a layperson, it seems a little bit contradictory given what we're seeing with the Omicron surge right now, the community spread that we're seeing all across the country. Do you think this new guidance is actually going to work in limiting some of the spread that we're seeing right now?
You know, and again, Aaron, I think if we could have the testing component of that, it would work. And I think here it's only going to cause it to go up probably a little bit. But that little bit, you know, it depends on who that is. If it's you, you obviously are going to get very concerned about it. If it's not in your community, but they can keep the conveniences open for you, you're not going to be as concerned. And I think that's the balancing point they're trying to reach here. And again, I think they're trying to say, hey, we need to start to learn how to live with this virus. In my opinion here, if we could get that testing component in there, I think a lot of people will feel a lot more comfortable with them dropping it down to day 5 and wearing masks for 5 days, but we don't have that quite there yet, Aaron.
So speaking of testing, Dr. John, these at-home rapid tests that have been so hard for people to find in a lot of places around the country right now, with cases surging like we're seeing at this point, do you think it's safe to gather in any way with friends or with family as we roll up to New Year's Eve without taking a rapid test first? And does it differ if you're vaccinated or not vaccinated?
And Aaron, I think this is the same essentially explanation I gave about a week ago for the Christmas holidays, and now this is going to be for the New Year holiday. If you're around people that are fully vaccinated and boosted, you don't need to worry that much about it. It's going to be a safe environment if you're in a private setting. If you're in a public setting, you don't know the vaccination status of others. That risk goes even higher. If you can get people to test beforehand, but again, tests are hard to come by, that can drop that risk down, or at least the confidence that that risk is dropping down to a certain extent. But anytime you go outside your environment, your private environment with people you know are vaccinated and have boosters, that raises that risk. The bigger concern are the children, because we know children hospitalization rates in part of the country are going up, and that's going to be a big concern as well after the holidays here. And so again, you know, look at it. I know we all want to celebrate, but look at it very hard and heavy as to who you're going to be with and what their status might be and what the risk puts you at that time period.
All right, got to build that checklist and actually go through it these days. Dr. John Torres with us tonight. Dr. John, thanks. Now, coming up in our next half hour, a look at more of the testing headaches taking place for thousands of people in the Northeast. Right now, we turn to the extreme weather that's been sweeping across the U.S. Blizzard warnings being declared as several inches of snow and high winds pummel states from the West Coast to the Rockies. That's causing accidents and road closures. Steve Patterson now with a look at who's bearing the brunt of this brutal weather.
Tonight, a blast of winter weather, turning parts of the West into a blustering snow globe, making holiday travel treacherous. In Northern California, whiteout conditions on the road.
It was so bad that it would be basically impossible to get from one exit to another.
The Sierra Mountains hit with several feet of snow, shattering December records, burying houses, stranding travelers.
It's been bad.
Shutting down several major interstates. The blizzard sparking several spinouts, accidents, and roadside rescues.
This is the most snow we've had in at least in 12 years.
The mountain snow direly needed. After years of thinning, the Sierra snowpack, which fuels much of California's water supply, got a major boost. But the snowfall overwhelming Lake Tahoe ski resorts, forcing them to shut down. Authorities there searching for a 43-year-old skier missing since Saturday. Across the country, 25 million Americans enter winter weather alerts from coast to coast. In the Pacific Northwest, frigid temperatures causing winter worries.
Too many people that don't know how to drive in the snow.
Parts of Oregon getting pummeled, while Washington State preps for an unusual cold snap. In the Midwest, blizzard conditions blasting the region from Minnesota to the Dakotas. In Fargo, near zero visibility as the region braces for bitter cold. Wind chills as low as 50 below zero in the forecast. A dangerous deep freeze closing out the year with more to come.
Steve Patterson joins us now from Los Angeles. Steve, a wind chill of 50 degrees below zero. How do you even prepare for something like that?
Yeah, Aaron, with a wind chill that low, authorities are telling people to stay inside. Any exposed skin can lead to frostbite within minutes. So again, the advice, stay inside. If you do go out, though, be extremely careful and bundle up all areas of your body. Aaron?
Steve Patterson in Los Angeles. Steve, thank you. Now, for the latest on where the extreme weather is headed now, we return to NBC News meteorologist Michelle Grossman. Michelle, bring us up to speed. What do we need to know?
Hi there, Aaron. Well, we're going to see storm after storm. We've seen this for weeks in the west, and we're going to continue to see this over the next several days. So taking a look at radar, it's relentless. We're seeing that rain, that snow moving onshore. We're seeing heavy rain in Southern California, and that will be the case tomorrow, too. So 25 million impacted by winter weather alerts in the west, especially. That's where the dramatic weather is taking place. We do have alerts in the northern plains, also the northeast, so slick travel in the northeast tomorrow morning. Here's a setup in the west. We're going to have heavy snow and gusty winds in the Four Corners. We could see winds gusting over 50 miles per hour along with that heavy snow. And then Wednesday, yep, it's another storm sliding down the coast, heavy rain and snow across Southern California. We could even see some flash flooding in Southern California. So we've measured this snow in feet. Some spots have seen over 10 feet of snow, and we could add on an additional foot of snow. That's where you see the darker colors in the pink. Now, we're looking at rain, too. I mentioned Los Angeles. Yeah, localized possible flooding, especially in those burn areas. Now, adding to this heavy snow, we have a frigid morning in store tomorrow morning. Wind chills as low as 45 below zero. So wind chill is what it feels like to your body. This is dangerous there. So tomorrow morning, we're looking at temperatures right around 1 degree in some spots, a lot of single digits, 10 degrees in Boise. It's going to feel like 6 degrees. -1 will be the actual air temperature in Rapid City, but it's going to feel like 18 below. And 14 in Sioux Falls. So Wednesday morning, same story. We're going to see that cold air expanding. Spokane, just 1 degree. It's going to feel like 11 degrees below zero. Rapid City, 1 degree. 19 degrees below zero in Fargo. And we're looking at 1 in Minneapolis. So, Aaron, it is a cold day the next couple of days, and we continue to see this heavy snow as we go through at least Wednesday. Back to you.
Meteorologist Michelle Grossman. Michelle, thank you. Let's turn to the economy now. Retailers saw a real surge in holiday season sales this year. With the presents unwrapped now, well, now comes the hard part, the returns. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster has more.
Now comes the multi-billion-dollar effort to correct Santa's mistakes.
I would say it's like 75 to 80%. It's going to go back.
After holiday sales saw their biggest increase in 17 years, up 8.5% compared to 2020. 2 in every 3 shoppers are now planning at least one return, putting an estimated $120 billion worth of products back into the system. And returns, while maybe free to you, are costing stores more than ever this year. With jumps in labor, transportation, and storage prices, processing a return costs retailers an average of $33 for a $50 gift.
When a consumer takes advantage of free shipping, that cost, which is not free, has to be borne somewhere. And the only somewhere in a retail setting is in the price of the goods.
The costs also extending to the environment. Returns produced an estimated 5.8 billion pounds of waste in 2020.
Often those gifts you return don't even make it to the original store shelf, but rather end up in a warehouse like this, where they're resold to third parties.
Companies like B-Stock processing those unwanted items for some of the nation's largest retailers, now bracing for what they're calling a tsunami of returns.
The continued shift for folks to buying online is going to result in some increases in customer returns.
Items bought online sent back 2 times as often as in-store purchases, adding to the flood of returns in this season of giving back.
So Shaq joins us now from inside that B-Stock warehouse we talked about. Shaq, what are some of the best tips that you've heard for people who do need to return 1 or 2 or all of their gifts?
Well, Aaron, it starts with keeping those gifts inside of the original packaging, keeping that tag on clothing. That makes it more likely that those gifts will be returned to the actual shelves rather than ending up in warehouses like the one we're in now. They also say keep track of that gift receipts. It sounds like you might have a couple of receipts to keep track of, so you might need a folder or something, but keep track of those receipts. That makes it more likely that you'll actually get a refund rather than having to just exchange it. And the last tip is be nice to folks when you go in and try to go and get that refund. You'll be surprised by how much discretion some of the actual store clerks have in deciding whether or not they'll take that return or just give you store credit. Aaron?
Shaq Brewster for us. Thank you, Shaq. Well, for a closer look at those huge holiday sales numbers, let's bring in advisor to MasterCard and former chair and CEO of Saks Inc., Steve Sadov. Steve, thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate it. You know, we're heading into the holiday season this year. There were a lot of uncertainties. We talked about the supply chain issues, inflation, COVID, obviously. In the end, what do you think happened here? What do you think caused this jump in spending that we saw online and in stores?
Well, I think what we saw was a very, very strong consumer season and reaction to the products that were out there. The overall sales growth was 8.5%. Importantly, this was a year where people went back to the stores. You saw an 8% increase in store volume. You saw an 11% increase in internet volume. That's on top of the double 50% type of growth that you saw last year. So internet has gone from 12% of commerce to this year, 20% of commerce. But I believe the real story is the consumer coming back to shop in the stores. And it's impressive. You saw some categories that had been really hurt during the stay-at-home period, like apparel, growing almost 50% this holiday season. So that it's remarkable how strong the people getting back to the stores has driven performance. Department stores have had a long-term secular decline. They grew 21% this year in terms of growth versus year ago. So I call this a very strong holiday season for the consumer. It was an early holiday season. Everybody knew about the supply chain shortages and the labor issues and getting products on the shelf. So the consumer went early. October started to be very strong, but you saw strength throughout the season. October, November, December, each month was strong versus year ago. And of course, Thanksgiving was a very strong Black Friday.
So you mentioned some of the areas where we saw this growth in sales. Was there anything, I know you said that the things were overall remarkable, but was there anything that really surprised you as you look at the outcome of the shopping season?
I guess the two areas that surprised me the most were apparel and department stores. The strength of those categories. Everybody during the pandemic was staying at home. They were living in their sweatpants. And now that they started to feel comfortable to come out again, they needed freshness, newness. Some of them needed new sizes and they wanted to get out there and find what was exciting. So the apparel, I've never seen apparel growth like that. And department stores, which are a primary venue for people buying apparel and people going back to the malls, were the beneficiary. It's going to be really interesting to see how well the department stores are able to maintain that volume and growth that they've seen, because they've been up against these headwinds for a number of years. So it's really an exciting time for the retailers. The markdowns were lower than normal, so you had less promotions. But then as you've said in the past, there were labor issues, there are supply chain costs. So overall, I think that those brands that were able to take the less markdowns, the pricing, will fare very well during this holiday season.
All right, Steve Sadov, we appreciate your perspective tonight. Thank you. And still ahead tonight, caught in the crossfire, the 14-year-old girl fatally shot by Los Angeles police as she shopped with her mother, what authorities say caused that deadly accident. Plus, the woman accused of killing her boyfriend with a sword on Christmas Eve. The chilling details from officers. And the flooding emergency in Brazil after heavy rain forced 2 dams to collapse. The race tonight to rescue people from rising water. Stay with us. Top story just getting started. Now to Top Stories Global Watch, and we begin with the award-winning director found dead in his cabin outside Quebec City, Canada. Jean-Marc Vallée, known for films such as Dallas Buyers Club and Wild, as well as the hit HBO show Big Little Lies. His publicist saying he died suddenly over the weekend, but did not give an exact cause of death. Valley was 58 years old. Thailand is boosting security along its border with Myanmar. Airstrikes by Myanmar's military on a rebel-held area near the Thai border, sending hundreds of people fleeing into the neighboring country. Refugees wading through rivers and jumping over fences to get away. Thailand says more than 4,000 people crossed over just this weekend. And the tribute in Cape Town, South Africa today as that country begins 1 week of mourning for anti-apartheid leader and human rights activist Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Bells at the cathedral will ring for 10 minutes at noon every day until Friday. It is the cathedral where he led marches and campaigns against South Africa's apartheid. Tutu died on Sunday at the age of 90. And now let's turn to the Americas, where we take a look at stories coming out of Latin America and from across the U.S. Tonight we start in Brazil, some areas hammered by deadly torrential rainfall and massive flooding for nearly 2 months. Hundreds of thousands have been impacted, one governor declaring it the worst disaster in his state's history. This as rescuers brace for more rain in the coming days. Tonight, the death toll from torrential rainfall and massive flooding in northeastern Brazil rising to 20 people. Thousands evacuated from their homes after 2 dam failures in the Brazilian state of Bahia.
Próxima ponte está uma loucura lá, está mar, ondas quase 2 metros de altura.
Search and rescues taking place by air and by water, with rescuers rowing along the flooded streets to reach trapped families. Many left stranded, trying to get out however they can, one man even paddling out on a blow-up mattress.
É muito triste, velho. Ver nossa cidade desse jeito. Muito triste. Nunca vi isso na minha vida.
The rain-drenched region has already seen more than 35,000 people displaced from their homes. Officials saying rainfall in some states had been 6 times greater than average. Bahia Governor Rui Castro saying at least 400,000 people have been impacted. According to local media, authorities are monitoring 10 more dams for any signs they may collapse. Even though the rain is subsiding for now, many parts of Bahia remain underwater.
Tenho recebido muitos vídeos, pessoas até se arriscando para salvar outras pessoas mais vulneráveis, idosos, crianças, se jogando na água, andando com água até o pescoço, usando boias. Então, é esse mutirão pela vida, essa união pela vida que nós vamos reconstruir.
And there is much more to come tonight. When we come back, outbreak at sea. Dozens of cruise ships reporting COVID cases on board, with many turned away from ports. What a passenger on one of those ships told Top Story. And Spider-Man swinging into the record books, the major milestone for the franchise's latest film, and it's something we have not seen since 2019. That's next. Back now with our Top Story news feed, and we begin with the Missouri woman charged with killing her boyfriend with a sword. Police say they found 32-year-old Brittany Wilson outside her home covered in blood on Christmas Eve. The 34-year-old victim found stabbed to death inside. Wilson reportedly telling police the two of them had taken drugs earlier that day. A judge in Colorado has set a new hearing date to reconsider a 110-year prison sentence for a truck driver behind a deadly crash. Rogel Aguilera Mederos was found guilty of 27 charges stemming from the fiery crash that killed 4 people back in 2019. Now, his sentence sparked protests and an online petition calling for a reduced sentence. The state says it will ask for a new sentence of up to 30 years. And the price of a U.S. passport going up $20 starting today. The cost of a first-time adult passport book is now $165 with fees. It will cost $130 to renew. The State Department says it's working to process the documents in 8 to 10 weeks, down from 18 weeks this summer. That was following a surge in travel. And the latest Spider-Man film has shattered a pandemic record. Spider-Man No Way Home making more than $1 billion at the global box office since it opened on December 17th. It is the highest grossing film of the pandemic and the first movie to hit that number since Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. That was in December of 2019. Now to another major headline tonight. The number of positive COVID-19 cases continuing to grow in the New York metro area, shattering records over the Christmas holiday weekend. Lines to get tested still blocks long in some places, and the demand for at-home testing kits is higher than ever. NBC's Gary Grumbach has more.
Tonight at this testing site in Deptford, New Jersey, hundreds of cars lining up for a COVID test amid a surge of COVID cases across the Northeast over the holiday weekend.
I've come here a couple times, and every time I come, it's a long line. Not that they're not doing good, it's just so many people want to test. So therefore, I think, yeah, they shouldn't need more testing sites.
In New York alone, a stunning 86,000 positive cases reported during the Christmas holiday. Officials now trying to get a grasp of the virus, opening up COVID testing sites inside subway stations.
I was looking for the home test and I couldn't find it anywhere.
At some sites in New Jersey, testing appointments are booked up days in advance. People desperate to find out if they are infected.
It's really scary because a lot of places are requiring them, but you can't get them. So it's actually kind of sad.
Some doubting the reliability of at-home tests.
Did an at-home test, and that was negative. I just want to come here and just get a better test, just to know where I am, so I can be safe for everybody else.
New Jersey saw daily COVID case numbers higher than the state has ever seen before. Its Department of Health recording nearly 13,000 positive PCR tests on Sunday and over 16,000 new positive PCR tests on Saturday. That's a 163% increase in COVID cases statewide in just the last 2 weeks, according to NBC data, one of the highest rates in the country.
We all tested positive over the holiday.
While COVID cases have seen a sharp increase in recent weeks, hospitalizations have not. Tonight, more than 2,600 patients are in New Jersey hospitals with COVID, just a fraction of what we saw last winter. The CDC announcing they are sending reinforcement, opening a surge testing site in New Jersey to help with the demand. While New York has put in place an indoor mask mandate, New Jersey's Governor Murphy has not, but says all options are on the table, leaving it up to local communities to decide what's best.
Everybody's testing positive right now, so it's a little scary because my son, he's only 4 months old.
As COVID testing lines and frustration over testing grows by the day, Governor Murphy joined President Biden's call on COVID response from Costa Rica, where he's vacationing with family. Aaron?
Now, the Omicron variant is also wreaking havoc at sea. The CDC now investigating nearly 70 cruise ships after reported cases of COVID on board. Officials in Mexico refusing to let passengers get off a Holland America ship in Puerto Vallarta after several crew members there tested positive. Seven Seas, Royal Caribbean, and Carnival cruises also forced to skip stops. One passenger saying her experience on a Carnival ship felt like sailing on a petri dish.
I felt that the longer we spent on the cruise, the more I felt like I was just in a petri dish waiting to catch COVID, because it was just seemed like it was spreading so rapidly. Like each day, more and more people were like, I'm sick, I'm in quarantine.
All of that a cause for concern among travelers this holiday season. Joining us now for some tips on how to navigate travel during the pandemic and hopefully save a little money too is the CEO and founder of The Points Guy. This is Brian Kelly. Brian, we appreciate you being here tonight. If a cruise ship gets turned away from one of the ports and the excursions are all canceled, are passengers entitled to any kind of refund?
You know, they're entitled to the refund if they paid extra for the excursion. But in terms of the cruise ship, when you buy a cruise, they are not guaranteeing that you're going to go to any ports. So, you know, the cruise lines will often give a discount on a future cruise if things didn't go as planned. But legally, you know, you're out of luck. So I just recommend go in with the best attitude, and you really just got to roll with the punches these days.
You know, if you've already booked a cruise and maybe now you're sort of rethinking that because of Omicron, because of these cases that we're seeing on ships now, how can you sort of minimize your losses, if at all?
You know, most cruise lines, they're not going to give you a full cash refund. So if you bought insurance that cancel for any reason, travel insurance, you're going to get up to 75% of your cash back. So you could still be out a lot. Most cruise lines will let you delay your booking in the future until you're more comfortable. But, you know, otherwise, you know, you don't have too many options.
Yeah, I've done quite a few cruises. I know you have to read the fine print and don't just shrug off the insurance when you get to that part of signing up for the cruise. You know, it's not just cruises, obviously, that we're talking about these days. We've had thousands of flights that have been canceled because of Omicron, too, in the last couple of weeks here. Millions of people trying to return home for the holidays. What do you think is the smartest offer that one of us could take from an airline in terms of refunds or anything they might do to try to make us whole?
Yeah, if your flight's delayed more than 3 hours or 4 hours, the airline should give you a full refund if you want to rebook. And many people this week and next week with the New Year's holiday, with weather patterns, it's going to continue to be really bad. We've heard horror stories of people taking days to get home. So if you don't need to travel, I would recommend waiting a little bit. You know, the CDC just today cut down the quarantine time for those with COVID, which will help the travel industry. So many of the delays we saw this past week were because, you know, crew members were quarantining at home, but it's going to take a while to get things up to speed. But if your flight's canceled, take the money. Do not take the voucher. And if you're at the airport and there's a long line, get on your airline app, rebook yourself. Or if the phone lines are really long, here's a tip I like. I call the foreign customer service numbers of airlines. So you can call, you know, United Airlines in Mexico, and usually the wait time there is much less than in the US when things are going haywire.
Some really good advice there. Never thought about that. The points guy, Brian Kelly. Brian, we appreciate your time today. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Back now on Top Story with a mother-daughter shopping trip gone horribly wrong. The police responding to an assault call when a teenage girl got caught in the crossfire. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson with the latest and the newly released police body cam footage.
Tonight, the death of a 14-year-old girl shot and killed by the Los Angeles police has been ruled a homicide.
He's hitting behind to the right, where the fitting room.
Newly released video shows the moments just before police say they accidentally shot the teen. The incident occurred at a Burlington store in North Hollywood last Thursday. Police say they were responding to an assault with a deadly weapon and possible shooting. The victim, identified as Valentina Oriana Peralta, was reportedly trying on dresses for a quinceañera. At the same time, police say they were shooting at the suspect in the earlier assault as he stood in front of a wall. Investigators say the 14-year-old and her mother were behind that wall, unbeknownst to officers.
We were able to locate a 14-year-old female who was found deceased in that dressing room.
The teen was killed by a gunshot wound to the chest, according to the medical examiner.
Preliminarily, we believe that round was an officer's round.
The suspect in the alleged assault that prompted the shooting, 24-year-old Daniel Lopez, was also killed. LAPD Chief Michael Moore saying in a statement that he is profoundly sorry and, quote, "This chaotic incident resulting in the death of an innocent child is tragic and devastating for everyone involved." The apology comes as the department faces scrutiny for firing multiple rounds in a crowded store. Law enforcement experts say it's too early to know exactly what went wrong. What is the protocol when police are pursuing a suspect who may be armed in a crowded place like a store?
You being the law enforcement official have a responsibility to be sure you keep everyone safe. You want to be able to place your shot in the right place, but unfortunately that may not always happen. And that's what makes this very sad and tragic.
The deadly incident is currently under investigation by both the Los Angeles Police and the California Department of Justice.
Priscilla Thompson joins us now. So, Priscilla, we've had the medical examiner rule this teen's death a homicide. Where do things go from here?
Well, Aaron, a determination of homicide by the medical examiner does not necessarily mean that someone is going to be charged with murder or manslaughter. And experts that I've spoken to say there are a number of other factors to consider here, including what officers were told when they were dispatched to that scene, and also if there were any violations to training or protocol. And some of those questions are going to be answered by a very close review of this video footage and all of this radio transmission and 911 calls that have now been released by the LAPD. Aaron?
All right, Priscilla Thompson with us tonight. Priscilla, thank you. New details now on the Biden administration's new national plan for Alzheimer's and dementia. That's not it, though. In discussing that plan, the Secretary of Health and Human Services also revealed something about his family that he hasn't discussed on camera before. Richard Louie has this NBC News MSNBC exclusive.
Javier Becerra runs the agency overseeing the FDA, CDC, NIH, and more. And this holiday season, an important reminder for families takes center stage.
Probably the best way to discuss this issue, dementia, Alzheimer's, today is to talk about the family members who are right now alone because of COVID.
Alzheimer's costs America more than $355 billion annually. 70% of that cost is paid for by families.
Everyone should be able to care for their loved one if they're willing to. My mother-in-law, who did suffer from dementia for many years, never was a day without a family member at her side. My father, who passed on New Year's Day 2020, and we, the family, became his caregivers, his hospice caregivers for much of his life. He lived with me his last 4 years of life.
Becerra moved his parents next door to help. He became one of 53 million Americans taking care of a loved one living with a disability.
When he started to decline, we would sleep in his bedroom with him. You know, those are tough days. You don't get a lot of sleep. You do things for your aged parent that your parent did for you when you were an infant.
I go through that battle now. I'm fighting with my siblings about how to pay to keep my father under the care he needs, my mom at home. How does the plan address that?
Well, the plan, which is updated every year.
The government plan on Alzheimer's and dementia tracks 5 goals, and this year a 6th new goal was added, funding new research on what behaviors might cause Alzheimer's or dementia.
Can I make sure that the diet that my parents have is healthier so that they're eating less risky foods? Absolutely. Can that help us when it comes to something like dementia? Well, that could help reduce the risk.
And that risk is higher for certain groups. In Black and Latino communities, the rate of Alzheimer's can be twice of others.
You and I grew up in poverty, essentially. When you think about health equity and this plan, bring those two together for me briefly.
In racial and ethnic minority communities, dementia hits hard and more often in some cases.
Most ambitious of the plan, to prevent and treat Alzheimer's disease within 3 years.
What is inspiring, one thing that your father said to you in your years growing up?
If you can get up and go to work, it's a good day. There was a man who really impacted my life, who makes it possible for me to jump high, to get up in the morning and have a good day. And so I won't forget my dad.
And Richard Louie joins us now. Richard, Secretary Becerra also talked about mental health there. How does that factor into this plan?
It's a big part of it, Aaron, and good evening to you. One of the issues that are related to it is the sheer number of individuals that are in this space. Although there are over 50 million family caregivers in America, just about all of them have experienced a mental health challenge. And that's why when you look at goal number 3 and goal number 5, and as well the new goal number 6, they're really trying to address the factors that everyday people are facing. And that's a mental health challenge, just as we face physical health challenge in our everyday lives. One way to think about it here, Aaron, is that when we think about what caregivers do, they often sometimes give too much of themselves. They have lack of sleep. They aren't feeding themselves properly. All this leads into indications of giving too much of self, of having a mental health challenge.
Our thanks to Richard Louie tonight. Thank you. Coming up, separated at birth, the woman taken from her mother 40 years ago, finally tracking her down, the emotional moment the two met for the first time. Stay with us. We are back now with an incredible story, 40 years in the making. A mother separated from her newborn baby girl in the 70s, finally getting the chance to meet her. Senior national correspondent Kate Snow has their amazing reunion.
I loved her from the first time I knew I was pregnant. Never stopped loving her.
Nancy Womack was just 16 years old and living at an orphanage in Dalton, Georgia, when she learned she was pregnant. The orphanage director found out and sent Nancy to the Bethesda Home for Girls in Hattiesburg, Mississippi.
And it was a long dirt road from the main road down to Bethesda. It just kept going and kept going. It was like a nightmare.
Bethesda was one of a network of children's homes founded by preacher Lester Roloff, who advertised the home as a place where troubled kids would learn discipline through the Word of God. But according to court filings that would eventually lead to the home's closure, girls who lived there said the discipline was achieved through physical abuse and fear.
You just learn after a while, after being abused and slapped, I guess survival mode kicks in. Just let me get through this day.
After 6 months at Bethesda, Nancy was put on her first airplane to fly to Tennessee to deliver her baby.
I remember going into labor and they just give me a shot and put me out. I don't remember having her. I don't remember them wheeling me into the delivery room. I don't remember nothing. She was done gone by the time I woke up.
What Nancy does remember is the love she always felt for her baby girl.
She was my firstborn. It's something that you never really get over. I remember thinking, well, she should be taking her first step now, or she should have lost her first tooth, or her first day of school should have started. And every year on her birthday, I know it didn't make any sense, but I always baked her a cake. She would be 12 today, she would be 13 today, she would be 14 today.
On the other side of the world, in South Africa, a little girl named Melanie was growing up as the child of missionaries.
My parents have always told me that I was adopted. They said it was important for my biological mother that I go into a good Christian home. I always had a lot of questions about her. I wanted to find her. I wanted to know more about her. I think there was fear that it could be very hurtful if I dug more and found out that she didn't want me.
Melanie eventually had 2 children of her own.
I really started thinking about what will I tell them about where they're from. And so I decided to do Ancestry. The most interesting part was that it came up with a DNA match. It had been almost 40 years. And I thought, you know, why not? My name is Melanie Spencer, and I was born in June of 1979. I was adopted as a baby from East Ridge, Tennessee. My adoption was closed, but I think my mother's birth name was Nancy.
Nancy's sister received Melanie's message.
She said, yes, I know the story.
She said she was looking for her adoptive mother, that she was born in East Ridge on June the 14th, and I knew who she was.
So I connected with Nancy through Facebook.
Hello, Melanie.
Hi.
How are you? It's good to finally find you.
I've wondered about you for a long time. It's a little overwhelming.
There's not a day goes by that I'd have not thought of you. I want you to know that you are loved so much. I'll answer any question you have.
After 42 years, Melanie drove from her home in Maryland to meet her biological mother for the first time.
Oh God, I'm so nervous.
How are you?
Hello. God, I'm so glad you're here.
42 years of questions. It feels like coming home.
And she's just what I thought she would be. She's beautiful, she's smart. These girls on the Bethesda groups, they talk about forgiveness and healing, and they say, let it go. I can't let it go. Yes, she's in my life, but so many things I've missed. But maybe after this, it won't be so bad. She will know the truth. I'm happy that she will know that she was loved.
That was Kate Snow reporting. Now, NBC News made numerous attempts to contact Roloff Homes, the former operators of the Bethesda Home for Girls, but we received no response. When we come back, the Christmas gift. The NFL quarterback surprising a waitress with 2 game tickets. Her reaction and what she told us about that now viral moment. Finally tonight, a different kind of quarterback sneak. The New York Jets QB out with his family on Christmas Day, tossing a surprise gift that made Christmas extra special for his waitress and her family. New York Jets quarterback Zach Wilson spent Christmas morning with his family, eating breakfast at the Ritz Diner in Livingston, New Jersey.
We got to go to a little diner for a little brunch on Christmas morning.
Working that morning away from her family, waitress Kensia Thaluma.
One of my other customers told me, do you know who's sitting with you? I say, no. He said, that's the quarterback of Jets. I said, shut up. Are you serious? Stop it. My son is a big fan of Jets.
While serving the Wilson family, Kensia mentioned her 22-year-old son, Scott, is a fan.
I'm taking a picture for you. And his autograph.
Zach saying hello to Scott on FaceTime.
She was obviously working on Christmas, which isn't fun. So, I thought it was just a good opportunity for me to make someone happy.
And then after the meal, a surprise.
She had briefly mentioned how she's always wanted to get him tickets to a game and, never had the opportunity to.
The rookie quarterback transferring his extra family tickets to Sunday's game.
I have 2 tickets.
Kensia reacting with disbelief.
Stop lying, stop.
I swear.
I did not expect that, not even for a minute,
From one family to another.
He's giving you a ticket to go to the game tomorrow. He's giving you a ticket.
An excitement level that carried over to the football game, with both families in the stadium. Zach Wilson leading the Jets to victory over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Kensia sharing this message.
Zach, I want to say thank you so much. My son had a blast. He enjoyed every second of it.
So let that be a lesson to you. The next time your mother randomly FaceTimes you, answer the phone. Thanks so much for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Aaron Gilchrist. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Good night.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.